Alright, this is going to be a quick little video, just kind of run through a couple things with looking at graphs and kind of establishing what type of graph they are, and more importantly, like how do we get them plugged into the graphing calculator. So when we go through here and we're discussing this, really what we're doing is that I just want to address this issue of, like how do we know what a graph is. So we start off right here and just kind of a quick review. In this case, this would be called a parabola. So this is a parabola, and in this case here, this would be a squared function. This would be y is equal to x squared as the parent function. Okay, this guy, go to number 3, we'll kind of go out of order here. In this case right here, this would be what we would call an absolute value function. And so we would have an equation that looks like something like the absolute value of x. I'm going to have to go through and save these as we're going. Alright, and so I pull down a little bit, and we move to 2 and 4. And in 2 and 4, what we see is that in this case right here, this is not a square function. This is not a cube function. This is either a cube root or a square root function. And so in this case here, this is actually a square root function. So this guy would look something like y equals the square root of x. Might have some changes on it, that's the main idea. Number 4, in this case here, this would be a linear function. So this would be something like y equals x, where you might have a slope and then a y-intercept on the end. Cruising right along to the next page. And this case right here, we would see that we would have what would be called an exponential function. An exponential function would fall in the lines of y equals some base, so we'll say 3 to the x, or it could be 2 to the x, or it might be a fractional quantity. But the point is that my variable is in the exponent. That's the key to this problem. On the next one, we've seen a square function, and we know a square function looks like this, as like a u, like a parabola. We've seen a square root function. A square root function goes like this. So in this case here, we're either a cube root or a cube function. In this case, we are a cube function. So this would be something along the lines of y equals x cubed. Alright, take a look at these last few. In this case right here, what we see is that this guy, we've seen exponential, and we know exponential stays kind of flat, and then once it turns the corner, it grows real quickly. We know linear is a straight line. We know square is a parabola. So by process of elimination, we say that this is a logarithmic function. So this would be something along the lines of y equals log of x. In this case right here, we know absolute value is a v. We know a square function is a parabola, square root, excuse me, my bad. A square root is something like that. A square is a parabola, and so this leads us to a reciprocal function. So this guy would be something like y equals 1 over x. And on the last one here, I pull that guy down. Oops, let's do that. We'll just go ahead and clear it and make a new one real quick. So on the last one, I pull it down, and in this case, what we have is we know a square function is a parabola. We know a cube function goes like this, so it's a snake or an S going vertically. We know a square root function starts off slow and then goes across. We know a cube root function is a sideways S. Oh, no, wait a second. No, we don't know that, because that's what we have, a cube root function. So this would be y equals the cube root of x. So that's a quick little run through of the different types of functions. Now, what I want you to understand is that any one of these are things that you can plug into your calculator, which is now what we're going to bring into. So, what I want you to understand is that these are called parent functions. And the reason they're called parent functions is because they don't have any transformations on them. They are just the base function. So this is not f of x is equal to 2x plus 3. This is just f of x equals x, just plain old x. This is just the square root. So it's not the square root of x plus 2 minus 3. There's nothing else added on to it. So as we're building, these are called the parent functions. And so from the parent functions, I want to make sure we know how to use our technology to be able to find these particular graphs. So Once we know the basic possibles for our parents, remember that we pull up our graphing calculator and you can go to y equals. So one more time. So from my home screen, I can go to y equals. If there's any equations inside there, you can press clear. And now we can type it in. So I can just type in y, or x, excuse me, is right here in the middle next to the alpha key. I can type in x, press enter. I want to see my graph. So what I do as a teacher to make sure that people understand what their windows are set up as is I tell everybody to go zoom number 6. So zoom 6. And what zoom 6 does, that gives you a standard window. So what we know right now is if I pulled this guy across and set him out on top, oops, let's go ahead and set this up real quick. So if I went ahead and pulled this guy out, it's not liking that. Sorry about that. If I pulled him out and looked at him, that means that this is -10, this is +10, that's -10, and that's +10. So, and I'm going by 1. So we actually can count it out. Over 1, up 1. Over 2, up 2. Over 3, up 3. And that fits the equation y equals x. The point here is, let me grab my tools. There it is. The point here is that at this situation now, we now know that this is the equation of a line that goes like this, passing through the origin, a little off right there. Alright, we come to the next one, and I want to be able to graph this, so I go to y equals, I press clear, I do the square root of x. I don't need to do zoom 6 again because I've already done it once today, but I'll do it again. I go zoom, I choose number 6. You can press the button 6, or you can go down to it. I press enter. That gives me a 10 by 10 window, and now I can see that in this particular case I have a square root function, which looks something like that. So, and we proceed on. We're not going to do all of these, but my point is that we proceed on through this, getting to the point where we start to understand that, hey, if we don't know the shape of a graph, we can use our graphing calculator to plug it in. Let's take a look at this one because the absolute value is hidden. So if I want to do an absolute value function, I hit y equals, I clear what I have. So where I find the absolute value bars is in the math key. So see it right there in red, math. I'm going to arrow over to num. So math, arrow over, num, and number 1. When I hit number 1 and pull it up, you'll see, it depends on what version of this calculator you have. A TI-83 that says ABS with parentheses. A TI-84, they started putting in little symbols. So now I can put my X in the middle, and I can hit graph, and it'll give me a rough sketch. It'll tell me what this is supposed to look like. So now I could, then draw that and get you to see that, an absolute value function does something like that. So use your calculator to find the characteristics of these functions and to look at them. Now, let's take this one step further. I'm going to hit pause for 1 second. Alright, so let's say this is a problem straight from your homework. And let's say we're looking at this and we want to know how to solve this. Well, you could do this by hand, but we also could do it in our calculator. We hit y equals. So I'm going to clear. Remember to find the absolute value. I would say math over to num, number 1. And then I would type in x minus 10. Okay, so now I can hit graph. I can see what it looks like. But that's not what they're looking for. They're not looking to see the graph right here. They want us to fill a table of values. Well, you'll notice right here in blue, right above the graph key, it says table. Well, if I hit second graph, that's choosing that blue key. At that point, I can arrow up to -4, and I can see that in this particular case, positive 14 is my solution, and I click on it, and it tells me, yeah, good job, you did great. I click OK. It brings up another one. It says 10, so I go back to my calculator, I go down to 10, and I look and it says it comes out as 0. Well, hey, that's a y-intercept or an x-intercept, isn't it? Alright, I check it. Check. Tells me good job. Now it wants 13, so I arrow down a little bit further. It tells me 3. So I type in 3, check it, tells me good job. Okay, now they want me to graph it. So I click on the image to make it bigger. So I click on the click to enlarge. I know now, because I already have the shape, because I already know my parent functions, I know this is an absolute value, so I should know that an absolute value will not be a straight line, it will not be a parabola, it will not be a sideways parabola or a circle, it will be a V, an absolute value. And if you hover over it, even tells you. At this point, they give me specific directions. They tell me what they want me to plot first. They want the vertex first. So when you're graphing, you're going to have to play around with that a little bit, because I'm not going to make a video for each one of these, but each one asks for something a little bit different. In this case, they want us to do the vertex first. Well, the vertex would be our low point. So we already know, we've already seen the graph. I mean, if we look at this picture again, pull this over, put up the graph, we can already see it that this graph apparently must come down and then go out right here. And I mean, I could change my window, but I'm not going to go into all that long explanation. So this thing must have a vertex about right here. Well, I happen to have a point 10, 0. So I grab my tool, I go over to 10, 0, I plot my vertex. Now it says, you notice now when I spread it out, it says just graph another point. Okay, so I'll just choose one. So how about -4, +14? All right, so I've got my graph drawn. Obviously, this window is 20 by 20. Remember, my graphing calculator is 10 by 10. That's why I'm not seeing everything on it. I click Save. I click Check. And sure enough, I did well. All right, so that's using your calculator to help you fill in the table, being able to plug in your function and kind of get a visualization of where you're going with it. So you don't have to do this all by hand. You actually can use your technology. Hope this helps, and here we go.